Leo Westerholm served with the 101st Airborne Division in World War II, and the interview has taken place in Lavaca, Texas. Could you explain to me where you were when you found out Pearl Harbor was attacked?
Yes. I was at A&I College in Kingsville, Texas, going to college. I had come in September, and on December the 7th it happened. Sunday afternoon, we'd eaten our lunch, and we were laying in our beds trying to study. And suddenly two other guys come in the room and said, "Hey, we're at war. The Japs have attacked us." Well, I didn't know what the heck they wanted to attack us for, but anyway, we got attacked, and that's where it all started.
How did it affect your family?
Well, I didn't have a family, but one of my family was my mother and dad, and they were home on a cotton farm trying to eke out a living the best they could. And they sure didn't want me to be a cotton farmer. That's the reason they were making me go to college, even though they couldn't afford to send me there. But I went, and I was studying to be either an ag teacher or I wanted to be a horse doctor. But I knew I'd have to finish up at Texas A&M if I was going to be a horse doctor. Okay?
Sure. When did you join the military? At what point were you finally inducted in the military?
I went into the military after December the 7th, the following summer. My two younger brothers came down to A&I, and I got them into the college and got them settled down. And then I asked my boss, who was also the chairman of the draft board, and I asked him, I said, "Can I stay in for another semester for the fall of '42? And he said, "You won't be able to finish." I said, "That's all I want to know." So I didn't start, and he told me, he said, "Why don't you go home and be with your mother and dad for a couple of weeks before we call you. I won't call you for at least 2 weeks." Well, as it was, it took him nearly 10 weeks before he called me, and then he wore out my welcome at home. But anyway, I finally got called on November the 23rd, 1942. I got on a train and went back down to Kingsville, where I was drafted from, and we sent on over to San Antonio. And let me tell you, we got there just in time for Thanksgiving, and the first thing they did, they said, you, and I was one of the U's, followed the sergeant there. He marched us down to get our first set of clothes, and then he said, "Now take all your stuff and wrap it up, and we'll mail it home, and y'all come with me." And we went down to the mess hall, and he first sat us down, and we got to eat, and then he said, "Now you're going to do KP for 24 hours. This was a kitchen that was open 24 hours a day. They were feeding continuously. I never saw so much food in my life. I thought, golly, they're going to make pigs out of us. And they did. I mean, we just gulletized that food down. It was delicious, we thought at the time. But anyway, that's where we started, and then we was processed over there at San Antonio at Brooks Army General Fort, or whatever you call it, Brooks Field. And that I realized pretty soon it looked like they were going to send us to the West Coast, to Camp Ord. And somebody said, "Man, we don't want to go to Camp Ord because they give you about 6 weeks of training, and then they send you out to the Pacific, and then the Japs will make hamburger meat out of you." I says, "Baloney that." And I saw on this wall a big sign that said, "Join the paratroopers at double pay." A private then got $50. If you was a paratrooper, enlisted man, you got another $50. So I said, "Man, gosh, don't have to walk into battle. I can fly in and jump, and I'm there. And I get twice as much pay." So I joined the paratroopers. And it didn't take very long before I was over Camp Toccoa, Georgia, which is near Fort Benning, and I started my training. And before I left, I met my old buddy, a friend from Blessing, Texas, and he said, "Where are you going, Leo?" And he said, "Well, I volunteered for the paratroopers." He said, "I'll volunteer for them too." So he did, but he didn't go with me. I went, and about 2 weeks later, I'd already been processed, and I'd been jerked out of the line, and the commanding officers for the medics, he said, "You are going to be a medic." I said, "I don't want to be a medic." It says that it's not negotiable. You're going to be a medic. Do you hear me, soldier? And I said, "Yes, sir."
So when were you? When did you volunteer for the 101st or for the airborne unit? When would this have been?
Brooks.
And what year would this have been about?
42, November of 42.
Okay.
And so away we went, and I was sent over to Camp Toccoa, Georgia, which is right northeast of Atlanta. And we got our basic training there, 21 weeks of it, because I was one of the first ones in my regiment, the 501, that were just forming up Company A, and I was medic, so I didn't go into Company A. I went into the medical detachment, and I started taking my medical school and learned how to fix up guys that had been shot to pieces. And I don't think I got very good training, but anyway, I thought I had pretty good training. I could do blisters on feet, so I thought that was pretty good. And we had plenty of those. So, and then we had calamine lotion for getting, what do you call that stuff you have calamine lotion for?
Poison ivy?
Poison ivy, that's right. Everybody got to eat up with poison ivy, including me too. I mean, between our legs and under our armpits and everywhere around our necks. What a mess.
Could you take us through the sort of training you went through as a trooper from kind of start until start to finish?
The first thing they did, they took us out and wanted to see if we really wanted to be a paratrooper. So they took us out to some 100-foot towers and made us climb up those towers and put on a rig, like the part of what a parachute around our body, and clip that to some lines that were about 20 feet long. And then they said, "Now you just jump out off of this platform and you'll drop about 30 feet, 40 feet before you'll get taut, and then you'll slide down, the rollers will roll you on down there about 500 yards in that sand pit." My gosh, now remember, I was up 100 feet off the ground. That looked like a long ways. And for a minute I thought, I don't want to be no paratrooper. This is crazy. What am I doing? And I told the sergeant that was telling us to jump out, and I said, "You don't want to jump? That's all right. Go back over there and climb back down." I went over there to climb down, and I looked down there, and there was a ladder 100 feet long, straight down. I thought, man, I'd collapse halfway down and fall the rest of the way and kill myself. So I went back over there and got that harness on and jumped out, because I got to the ground quicker and I got there safely. But anyway, that's the way I started.
Yeah.
And then we went into our basic training and all that kind of stuff, and we got medics. We had to take bayonet practice. We had machine guns, mortar fire, rifle fire. We had to be marksmen and all that kind of stuff. And we learned it all and did everything in time, and we were assigned to a platoon of men, and I got myself assigned to my old friend Rex that had followed me into the paratroopers, so I could be with him. And we went 21 weeks at Toccoa. Then we got up one morning and we walked 90 miles down towards Fort Benning, Georgia. And then the trucks picked us up, and we didn't have to walk the rest of the way. Now that was the end of the second day before they picked us up. And man, you talk about dead. We were damn near dead. 90 miles.
Did you have to run up Mount Currahee?
Huh?
Did you have to run up Mount Currahee?
Yeah. I did that one time. I run up there and rolled down. I was dead too. But anyway, we went from there to Fort Benning, and Fort Benning we went through a 4 weeks jump school. That was pretty intensive. That was a lot of fun though.
Could you describe your first jump?
Oh yeah, my first jump, we got all our training, and then the 4th week we was there, we were going to go out and once a day for 5 days. We would make a jump. We had to do 5 jumps. So boy, I went out there Monday morning and I got my parachute on, and they counted us off and put us in the plane. Well, you know, there's 2 sticks in the plane. First, the guys on the left, they come out first, and the guys on the right, they come out second. Well, I was the number 1 man on the second group that was going to jump. Over there on the other side, there was 11 men, and the first one was Peter Rabbit. That was a skinny little old boy that if you said boo, he would scared and run. You know, he was nothing. And I thought, he'll never jump, especially since he'd be the first one. And you know what? That jump master said, stand up, and those guys stood up, and little Peter Rabbit stood up. Up to the door he went, and out he went. I said, my God, I got to go now. I can't be a scaredy cat. So, before I knew it, the plane had come around again, and he looked at me and told the rest of us, stand up and hook up. And man, I stood up and just mechanically hooked up and got up to the door. And I don't think I jumped, because I think I could feel a kick in my seat of my pants as he kicked me out. But I went out, and suddenly everything turned deathly quiet. The chute opened about 85 feet from the plane, and it was nice and quiet and beautiful up there. We was up about 500 feet. I looked over there, was the next guy, and hollered at him, and we could talk to each other. So we drifted on down, and man, I made my first chute. I said, man, this is easy. And we made the next 4 days, we made our jumps, except the last day we had to make it at night. It's a night jump. Now that is scary, just jump out in the black hole. But anyway, I did that one too. And then we was sent immediately on a 10-day furlough. And I came home for the first time after being in service. So I've been in since November, and in April I come home on my first furlough. And of course I was a big paratrooper. I could now blouse my pants up into my boots and stuff like that. We couldn't do it before. We could have boots, but we could not show them. And we were very particular about that. Now I want to tell you something about the paratroopers. The paratroopers is like a family, very much a family. Your man on your right, the one on the left, I was an aide man, and I had, in my platoon, there was 27 men that I had to take care of. All their aches and pains and everything, they were my responsibility. Headaches, calamine lotion for itch and everything else. And you really become close to them, and they become your family. And that's good, because then you'll do anything for them. Example, I found myself suddenly, those guys were lugging, carrying not only the rifles, but the machine guns and the mortar pads and the mortar tubes and stuff like that. And I'd see a guy lugging along, and he was pooped out and everything, and I'd run up beside him and I said, let me carry that thing for a little bit. And I could take his machine gun and carry it, because I don't know how they weighed, about 30 pounds, something like that. And I would carry that thing on my shoulders for about a half a mile, and then I'd give it back to him and just give him a break. Then I'd go over and take a little break myself, walk a little bit, and find another guy. And that's the way the medic did it. We helped our men out. They were our brothers, and they meant something to us. And that's why I say that the paratroopers always fought good together, because they protected one another. They believed in it. They believed in each other, that they could do anything. We knew we were good. We knew it. And we believed it. And that's the reason we were damn good. We had a esprit de corps just like the U.S. Marines. They got a good esprit de corps. But that's because the men all trained together, and they start out with 125 people, and they get down to 100, and then down to 90, and then whoever graduates, they're the family. The rest of them are quitters. You don't want them. You don't want a quitter in your outfit. You want a guy that'll keep it going, like I did. After I saw Peter Rabbit jump out of that airplane, I had to jump out. Man, I would have been a quitter if I hadn't. So that's the way we started, and when we got that, training became more intensified. We went to Camp Call, that's up at Fort Bragg. And at Fort Bragg, we had a heck of a good time. We run around in the woods, getting lost and all that kind of stuff. And I was lucky, being an old farm boy, I couldn't get lost very easily. I could always figure out how to get back by looking at the stars and this and that. But most of those city slickers, they were kind of stupid. They couldn't find a way out of a wet paper bag if they was inside it. They couldn't even get out of it. But anyway, I had a lot of fun at Fort Benning, training there, and then at Camp McCall, we trained all summer. And then they come along and they wanted to send me to a school. I said, what kind of school? He says, oh, don't worry about it, just pack your bags, you're going. I said, where are we going? He said, we're going to send you by train, about 20 of you guys from A Company, B Company, and D Company. And you're from the medics. And I was the only one from the medics. And y'all are all going down to the Citadel at Charleston, South Carolina. We went down there, and you know what? When we got down there, they told us that we got to give you a test. So they gave us a test. They turned around and said, we got to give you another test. I said, why? He said, well, you're not any good at languages. As you know, I was Danish, and I could speak the language very good and read and write it too. No, I said, you're not very good at languages. You'll make a good artillery officer. We're going to send you to artillery school. Oh, God, I don't want no damn artillery school. I get separated from my old buddies that I started up with. So we all talked about that night, and we said the only way we all going to get back to where we started was to flunk our test tomorrow. And I couldn't. I said 2 + 2 = 29. We were sure we missed every question. And they called us in that afternoon and looked at the score, and they said, man, you're a dumb thing. They said, you're not good at physics. At math. I said, I didn't say I was good at math. I said I wasn't worth a damn at it. I'm good on language. No, your language test showed you're no good. I said, okay, well, send me back to my camp. So they sent us back, and we all came back, and we came back to our buddies, and was we glad to see them. We said, we're never going to get out in that kind of a thing anymore. Well, my first sergeant, which was a guy by the name of, oh, golly, what is his name? I got this sickness in the head, I can't remember anything anymore. That's what you get. When you get 82, you go completely crazy. Golly. But anyway, my first sergeant, he ended up being governor of North Carolina, and he was smart. And he was a good sergeant, except he was a Democrat, and I'm a Republican, and so that made him not so good. But I forgave him for being dumb like that. Anyway, that's the way we were to each other. We believed in each other, we fought with each other to no end. Then after we got through with that, we were pulled out and we were sent up to to Tennessee for maneuvers. We had maneuvers from September, October, November, and to the middle of December. We walked all over Tennessee. We walked from the Cumberland River on the Kentucky border all the way down to Tullahoma, which is way down the southern part of the state. And tell you, we had a good time there, really did. We just, like I say, we was all over the place and really enjoyed ourselves. Got some good training and found out we could do a lot better than we thought. That's where we learned how to sleep out in the open and with the ticks and everything else, and how to stay warm and stuff. Those little pup tents, 2 men in there, you slept real close to each other because that way you could stay warm. Anyway, no kidding. Boy, did we have a good time in Tennessee. And suddenly they pulled us up and put us all back to North Carolina and gave us a pass for 10 days. And boy, we went home in December of 43. Now the war was really getting hot then. I knew that the time was up for training. Now we were fully trained in all weapons, and I was a medic though, and I had more medical training. So when we come back, I think we was back about 3 days, and they had us packed up and on a train, and away we went to Massachusetts. I forget the name of the camp where I was going. I know what it is, but I can't remember now because I got this horrible disease. I can't remember anything. Anyway, we were sent overseas. We got on that boat. We went out, and boy, it was awful weather, cold. And then about the third day out, it started getting warm. We asked the Navy boys, where are we? And they said, oh, we're right off of Florida, a little below Florida. I said, what the hell are we doing down here? Are they going to go through the Panama Canal? I said, no, we're going to England. He said, but we're coming down here and to pick up some others, and we'll catch another bunch of ships. And then about 2 days later, it started getting cold again. Then it got real cold. And then we got some stormy seas. In January of the year, the North Sea and that North Atlantic is the devil with it. I mean, it was growling mad. And we were sick and vomiting all over the place. But I could retain my food, but my buddies, they couldn't retain it. And I was having to go down with their ticket to get their food, and all I would do is turn in the ticket and get the piece of fruit that they got, an orange or an apple, and I'd take that back, and that's all they ate the whole trip. But I ate all of my food until the guy behind me vomited on me one day and splattered it all over my head and down my neck. God darn it. It wasn't nice at all. I had a few short words for him, and he said he couldn't help it. I said, well, hell, why didn't you throw it off against the wall? But anyway, we got over to England, and we got off the ship and got on a train, and this is where we got our first surprise from the Limeys. My golly, we was on that train just whistling away, and they come by, and they said, these girls, and they gave us a tea, and it was hot tea with cream and sugar in it. And we thought, what the hell, a way to ruin good tea? Why isn't it iced tea? No, you want hot tea. So they gave us the hot tea, and in that tin cup that we had, my gosh, you burn your lips with that hot, because that hot tea was nearly about 210 degrees hot. But anyway, we made it through, and then we got, we thought it was a pie. And said, oh, they're giving us a nice piece of pastry. So we bit into it, and it was a shepherd's pie, which is sheep pie. God, it tasted like it too. Horrible. We weren't quite used to that damn food. But anyway, we made it on the way back to camp. That's all I had to eat that day on riding the train.
Where were you stationed when you arrived?
All right, we was coming out of, no, not Birmingham. We was coming out of Liverpool. We landed at Liverpool, and then we had to go down to South England. And we came all the way down. That's somewhere in the Hereford Division, somewhere halfway between London and Swindon, and that area in there. And that's where nearly all the paratroopers were stationed, because it's fairly flat land down there where the planes could always have us out, making us jump out there, practicing playing our little soldier boy games and all that stuff.
Could you describe some of the training that you received?
Oh yeah, let me tell you what, when you got that training there in England, we didn't realize it at the time, but the way it was set up, when the invasion started, I realized, hey, we've done this one before. That was the funny part. They had it pretty well. I don't know if you've ever read the thing about slapping sands. That was an invasion that they made in England about 6 weeks before the invasion of Normandy. And the seaborne troops came in, and we jumped right behind inside the beaches, like we were supposed to. And I come out of that plane, and I hit that ground, but the ground was a tarviated road. And I come down, and my tailbone, ooh, I was out. I thought somebody had kicked me to where the boot stuck plumb up in my brain. It was awful. And I laid there, and all of a sudden, shoo! Here come a truck by and missed me by 6 inches. I said, man, I'll tell you, I got well enough to where I rolled off the road. And they still kept coming by. And then here come a tank grinding by. And man, was I glad I rolled over a little through the ditch and a little bit further away. But that's the way it was. That was our training. And Slapping Sands, you want to read that. That's a real good book. That's where the German E-boats caught that practice invasion they had in England. They caught them and sunk a bunch of them, and we had nearly 500 soldiers died in that exercise. And they wouldn't let them any more mail be delivered or sent out because they knew the invasion would start, and they would just call it an invasion casualties. That's what it was written down as. And then they turned loose their stuff to the families, the letters they'd written. But anyway, what a time. What a time.
Could you describe what sort of missions your unit was trained to do, like an airborne unit, versus what a regular Army unit would have been trained to do? What was your specialty?
Well, mine was medics, and I had one thing to do. But when the invasion got ready to start, I was switched from being an aid man for 1st Platoon I Company to 3rd Battalion Supply Sergeant. And they immediately raised me from a private all the way up to a sergeant, buck sergeant, but they said we can't do the paperwork now because we're going to take you over and put you on the plane, and you're to go out and find all the supplies and bring them into the battalion aid station when we get to France. So I said, okay, but when do I get my stripes? And he said, well, we'll do that when we get back. Well, I didn't ever come back. So I was served as a prisoner of war, as a private, the whole damn time. But anyway, that's all right. I didn't mind. What the heck? I got back out of it alive. That was the main thing.
What did you think of your fellow officers and soldiers in your unit?
Most of the officers were fantastic. They were just like us. We were close to them. We had respect to them. We always saluted them when we were supposed to. But we didn't ever call them by their first name. We called them Lieutenant Smith or Lieutenant Jones. We didn't call them Lieutenant Jack or, hey Jack. My God, we wouldn't dare do that. The paratroopers were very finicky about saluting. That's a mark of respect for the other man. But in the same token, that when we saluted an officer, we expect the officer to return our salute. Otherwise, we would get mad. And I'm going to tell you, it's the sergeants and the corporals, they're the ones that can make a general. But they can also bust his butt down to nothing if he doesn't get along with his men. You didn't know that. Well, you know it now. Just remember that.
What sort of things did you do to entertain yourself on leave?
To what?
What sort of things did you do on leave, on your spare time?
Oh, yeah, that's the fun part. When we got to England, we'd get, every once in a while, we'd get a pass to go to London. And when you got a pass, you'd also get a chip which showed you what hotel you were supposed to stay in. And that hotel was run by the Red Cross, and you go in there and you only pay 25 cents for a room and a bed in it. But you might find a room that had 5 or 6 beds in it, cots. But at least, you know, you had a place to sleep out of the rain or whatever it was, in the cold. Well, a lot of the guys, they didn't like that, having to pay the Red Cross 25 cents for a bed. Well, it was real easy why they had to. Simply this, that the British government made their troops pay for it, and we were in their country and they called the shots. We didn't. So they told us, you get paid a hell of a lot more than our boys, you pay your price too. Now, what is it they said about the Americans? The Limeys said they're over here, overfed, overpaid, and oversexed. So, you know, we didn't have anything to gripe about. There's always some Americans that gripe about anything. They thought it was not fair they had to pay them. And the Red Cross was just trying to make some extra money or something like that. They were just following orders, what they had to do.
Well, how did the local population receive the American GIs?
Oh, real good. And that reminds me of another thing. In the whole process, sometimes, cut it off. Would you please?
Yeah.
Okay. Now remember this. I'm a little boy. I'm a big boy. And I like pretty women. And those limey girls look pretty good too. And I met one while I was over there. Her name was Joyce Maddock. And it was on Sunday afternoon, and I was due to go back about 10 o'clock that night back to my camp. And I went out to Green Park, sat on the edge of the bench, just watching the sun go down. And there was two other girls sitting on that bench on the other end. It was about 20 feet long bench, and I was way down on one end, they were on the other end. And being the boy that I was, and pretty good about flirting, I just kind of got up and started sliding on down to them. And I took a look at them.
Let's pause that.
Anyway, I was sitting there at that park bench, and I looked at it, and I said, now that's the good looking one. She was the taller one. I don't even remember now what her name was. But that was the one I wanted to beeline in on. Well, those girls had to go home, so I said, I'll walk you home. So I got on the tubes, rode the tubes here and there, and transfers and everything else. And all I remember, they lived out of Liverpool Street Station, which is no longer there anymore. It's been taken out and eradicated and whatever. But anyway, I went out there, walked those girls home, and suddenly this girl that I wanted to get a hold of, she disappeared into the dark of the night. It was about 10 o'clock then. Well, I grabbed the other one, and that's the one I ended up marrying. I was married to her for 10 years before she finally kicked me out. But anyway, the thing of it was that that was my first love, and that's the thing of it is that we had good times together, but I had to go, and I said I'll be back again, and I did. We went back, and I got Eddie Hall, my buddy. Well, I said, Eddie, said, we get a pass. How much money you got? He said, I got $2. I said, well, I only got about $1.50. So I said, well, we got the 25 cents for the hotel room, so we got that. But I said, we don't have to worry about it. I bet I can get to stay at this little girl's house. So we did. Well, before we left, now here's the little devilment in us. We went down to get our breakfast that morning before we was going to take off. And it was dark, very dark. The sun didn't start coming up until about 9 o'clock. So by 5 o'clock in the morning, it's just about a little past midnight to us. And the mess sergeant opened up the door and got some meat or something, eggs out, to take into the mess hall. Well, we were standing in line waiting to be fed, but we were out in the dark. And I handed my tip to eat it, and I handed it to another guy. And my buddy, Eddie, he handed his to another guy. And I said, Eddie, let me know. So I stepped in the mess hall, and there was a 5-pound box of cocoa. I took that thing. I took a 5-pound sack of sugar. I took that and looked over there, and there was some meat. And there was a loin of a hog, about, I guess about 15 inches long, and about as big as around as my legs. And I took one of those, and I turned around and walked out. And Eddie opened the door and he said, "Go! Here comes the mess sergeant." And he stood in the way so the mess sergeant didn't see me, and I got away. I went back to my barracks, and the bush out there, and I put the cocoa and the sugar down, and took the meat, and went in and got a towel and wrapped the meat in a towel, and put it under my bed. And then I hurry up and rush back down to the mess hall. Well, Eddie then had been falling back in the line and letting everybody go ahead because he had my mess kit as his own. And I come up there when it's just about time for him to go in. And I got my breakfast too. Now we had something good to take into London. You see, those people over there, they had a ration of about 2 ounces of meat a week. That's all. And they didn't know what chocolate was, and they didn't know what sugar was. They just didn't have it. Very little sugar and stuff like that. So when we got our pass that morning at about 9 o'clock, we went down the train and caught the train into London and went to this girl's house. And we gave her mother that pork loin, and we gave her the sugar and the chocolate, cocoa. And we told her, said, Eddie and I would like to take Joyce to whatchamacallit. And I noticed that other girl there, and I said, "Who is this?" He says, "This is my sister-in-law. This is my brother's wife." "Oh, well, where's her husband?" He says, "He's in India with the CBI. He's with the Limey troops over there." I said, "Well, can't she come with us? With you and I, and let Eddie take her, and we'll go into town, go to show, and then we'll come back. And then by that time, your mother will have something made out of this stuff." So the mother said, yes, she would be glad to do that. She said, "Just a minute. When y'all go out, stop down there at my sister's house and tell her to come up here. I want her to help me get this stuff ready." So that's what she did. And we went on into London downtown, and we walked up to a symphony hall. And, you know, what's these opera singers, Pavarotti or whatever it is?
Yeah, Paparazzi.
Paparazzi, yeah. And all those guys like that. And we stood there in front, and 2 little old American GIs with 2 little limey girls, and these 2 old women come up to us and said, "Would you like to have tickets to go into that?" She says, "Yes, ma'am, I sure would." I was thinking about whether the place to stay warm, because it was cold outside. This is in February. Mm-hmm. No, it wasn't. It was later than that. But anyway, it was still cold. And so they gave us 4 tickets, and we went in there, and we was down. I now know why she gave them to us, because nobody else wanted them. Mm-hmm. We was in the front row, and right in front of us stood the director. So we could see and hear everything. And we saw an opera going on, and I mean to tell you, it was interesting. Mm. That's when Eddie and I really got some good culture. Of course, those 2 girls got culturized too. we had a good time. We came from that. We came on home, and Joyce's mother had fixed that meat up with potatoes and some vegetables and gravy. Boy, that was good gravy. And it was really good, and a good dessert, and she had made hot chocolate for us. And because that's one thing they get plenty of bread and plenty of milk. There was no shortage of that in England. And so, I don't know what it was, but whatever it was good. And she fed her sister, and her family came there too, and they ate thanks to us. We had brought the food in, because they just couldn't. There was more meat there than they would see for the next year. That's how much meat we brought. So they really had a good time. And I know we were stealing from the United States Army, but you know how we were. We were kids and we'd do anything. And we went on back, and you know what? That's when the invasion started.
Could you describe the events that?
And when we got back to the camp, they told us, hurry up and pack up. We're going to go into the airport. And we got into the airport, and we were locked down. You couldn't get out. While we was riding the bus over there, they wouldn't let us open the windows or anything or talk to anybody. We were strictly blackout. And we got in there, and we couldn't talk to anybody that was on the airfield. We was isolated. Now, we knew something was wrong when we got 4 meals a day. 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and at 12 at midnight. All you wanted to eat. How much you want, soldier, they would give you. I want 4 scrambled eggs. How do you want them? Scrambled hard or soft? Soft scrambled. Okay, they would do it just the way you wanted it. Give me another piece of bacon. Give me another slice of ham. They'd give it to you. They were fattening up the hogs for the slaughter. And we knew who was going to slaughter. We weren't. But that was all right. We were happy. Then that day, for the next 3 days, we went down to the huts where they had laid out where we were going to land. And we could see it. So when we did come in on invasion, I knew right away exactly where I was. I found some landmarks, and I said, well, now I know where it is. Instead of going that way, I got to go that way. I knew right away which way. And most often were that way. We had studied those sand tables. That was what they were. Built just like real mock, just exactly the way the terrain was. And we did that for about 5 or 6 days. And in the meantime, they were fattening us up. Man, we were getting fatter and fatter and fatter. Man, we had ribeye steaks and everything else like that. It was the best of food. And the way we wanted it. And the cooks were all kind to us. They didn't snap back and smart talk us or anything like that. But anyway, then June the 4th came. And we got packed up and ready to go. We turned in our kits, wrote our last letters, and got ready to go out to the plains, and in plane, get in our stuff and parachutes and everything. And right before we went down there, orders come down. Invasion's been called off. We won't go tonight. Well, when are we going? They don't know, but it's been called off. I said, well, I ain't griping. I just got another day to live. Because I was going to get killed anyway, and most of it we all figured we would. They had figured the airborne troops would have been a casualty list of anywhere from 60 to 80% would be lost. We did a lot better than that. We only lost about 15%. So that wasn't bad. Anyway, away we went. Planes took off at about just when it got dark at 10 o'clock. And they were all pulling a glider. And the planes took off, and I mean, tell me, we prayed for that plane. They seemed like they just couldn't get off the ground. Finally they got off the ground. And them poor motors were straining like hell. And they took off and kept going, and we flew from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Coming close to about 12:45. Then suddenly we started seeing lightning. And then we started hearing hail. That was flak hitting the planes and ripping through the planes. And guys all of a sudden hollering, help, I'm been hit. And I said, oh my God, how can I fix anybody up in his plane here? Well, we had been told, don't worry about anybody that's hit. Just let them leave them in the plane, let them come back. So I didn't take them. We just had orders to unhook them. And then the next thing you know, the green light came on, and out we went. And I was man number 23, except there was 3 fellas I had to step over. They had blood all over the floor of the airplane, and blood on aluminum flooring is slick, slick, slick. And we were slipping around in that damn stuff, and I was glad to get out of there. And just as I got to the door, the guy in front of me was an infantryman. He stumbled and fell with his head out the door. Okay? And I was right behind him, so I just stepped right on top of him, and I went out in front of him. Now, let me tell you the climax to that story. About the year 1998 or 99, he came up to me at one of our reunions, and he said, "Aren't you the medic that was in the same plane that Captain Hitchcock was on?" And I said, "Yeah, I sure was." He said, "Well, I was the medic that you stepped on going out of that plane. I was sitting right beside you." I said, "Are you that guy?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, did you hear anybody hollering for help when you got in the water? Did you nearly drown?" He said, "Yeah, I was damn near up belly deep in water, and I heard somebody hollering for help, said he was drowning or something. But hell, I was just trying to save myself." Well, that's the way I was. I was just trying to save myself. I was in about armpit full of water. So anyway, I did get to meet the guy and find out who he was. And he made it through the war, even though we had a hell of a stop.
Could you describe what you saw when you looked out of the plane and you jumped? What was the scene like?
Well, it was just like lightning in the sky. But see, they were throwing up flak at us. And flak explodes. You don't see no flak. You just hear it come whistling by you. And every time there's a flash and there's some whistling, well, I didn't get hit that time. See? But we were scared sometimes it's going to hit our chute and cut some of our lines, and when we jump out, our chute will malfunction and we'll drop. But anyway, we jumped out of the plane. I figured that we was about 85 to 90 feet from the water. As we was coming over the swamp, they gave us the green light. And I came out, and just as the chute opened, bang, I hit the water. So the chute will always open at 85 feet from the plane. So that's the reason I know I was 85 to 90 feet from the plane, above the ground. And the planes kept coming over, and I looked up, and it looked like a 4th of July celebration. I mean, the anti-aircraft guns were shooting at them, tracers going up through the planes and everything. And the planes kept on going. They didn't come down. They just kept going. But that wasn't so, because there was a lot of planes were knocked down. Anyway, away we went. Now I said, I got to get out of here. Where am I? Well, the planes are coming from that way. That means they're coming out of the Atlantic Ocean, like they were due to come in. They're going over and hitting the flak, where the German anti-aircraft units are up. And they're going that way, and that's to St. Mary Glees, in that area where we're supposed to go. So, I don't think I'm through the river yet. There's a little river there with swamp on both sides of it. And the river was probably about 50 to 100 feet wide. But they did tell us that it was hard to get across it, because it was anywhere from 30 to 50 feet deep. Now, with all the junk that I had on me, equipment, I couldn't swim with that equipment across there. So I said, well, I've got to go back the way the planes are coming. So I started back. And I come into shore, and I could see some Germans standing there. So I kind of backed away and went further upstream and came in again. And you know what? As I come up on the bank, there were standing 2 German soldiers. And when they saw me, they opened fire on me with machine pistols. I mean, they were very rude, I thought. And I could feel the bullets going by me, because they were hitting some of my equipment and jerking me around a little bit. So I, of course, dropped back down into the water again, because that was my only protection. And then they run that way. I said, well, if they're going that way, I'm going to go this way, the other way, because they're going back to their buddies, and I don't want to meet their buddies. So I started that way. And I went about another 50 or 100 feet, and I come back out on the bank again, and a rifle flare went up. And it scared me. I was scared. I said, hell, this war is hot. And they started shooting at me again. And I said, well, you know what? I know if I was those Germans, I would shoot first and ask questions later. Now, how am I going to get them to kind of change that around a little bit? So I crawled out on the bank, and the grass was probably about knee deep. But I swear up and down it wasn't but about an inch deep. That's what it seemed like. And I crawled in that grass and get away from the water. And I had to kind of crawl up on the slope. And I could see up on the slope when the lights come on, anti-aircraft were firing. I could see there was a lot of troops in that area. Well, I don't know if I'm going to get through those troops, because I'm going right through their gun emplacements. Well, I didn't have long to wait. They turned around and started firing at me again. And they knew I was out there. I was running around, and Feldwebel, that's a sergeant, a German sergeant. He was hollering at his troops to go here, go there, come on, get going. And they were coming across this open space right at me. They knew I was out there, and they had to go out there and find me and pull me in. Well, I would hate like the dickens to have been one of them coming out there, because if I had a pistol on, which I didn't, or any kind of weapon, it wasn't. Now, I had a British Hawkins mine, that's a 5-pound landmine, and I had 2 phosphorus grenades on me. And those phosphorus grenades, I was trying to get them out of my pocket and get away from them, because if they got hit by a bullet and opened up, then I would be on fire, and that would burn me bad. So I was trying to get rid of them, and I couldn't get rid of them. And by that time, they were nearly up to me, and one went about 5 feet on this side, and the other one went about 5 feet that side. And they didn't stop. They didn't see me. They went up to the bank where the water was, and I heard the sergeant told them, turn around and go back again. They come back, but they moved over a little bit. Well, this time, he was about 3 feet from me. Well, when he got to me, he had his gun pointed this other way, and when I stood up, and he swung around with it, and I thought, oh God. But he didn't fire. I just jumped out, and said, medic. And he said, yeah. And he says, hollered something else in German, I don't remember what it was. But the next thing you know, they were all over me. And they brought me all the way in, took everything off me, and all my equipment and everything. And the officer came out and asked me a name, rank, and serial number. I gave it to him, because that's what I was supposed to do. I did it, and he pulled me in his little hut that he had there, and he had a little candlelight there. He got out a big telephone book, looked like a Houston or San Antonio telephone book, and he was paging through it. And then suddenly he started reading name, rank, and serial number, where I was born, when I was born, when I went to grade school, and my ancestry, the whole thing, all my training I had. In fact, he brought me up my history all the way till 2 weeks before the invasion started. He had it. And then he said, you don't know anything. You're just a sanitator. That's a medic. Tell you what you do. Now, he had told me, before he started questioning me, to take off all your clothes, your boots, everything. I had to stand in front of him, jaybird naked, while he questioned me. And he told me, you don't know anything. You get your clothes on, but you don't put your socks on. And the only thing you put on is your long john tops and your boots. and take your laces out of your boots and take and lace all your clothes together in the bundle, and you carry it on top of your head, and the guard here will take you down to the pen. Now that's the way I started. That was my start as a prisoner of war. Now I weighed 185 pounds at that time. 60 days later, I weighed 106 pounds. How much did I get to eat? 12 days I didn't get anything to eat. Probably for 4 days I didn't get anything to drink. Nothing. And the first thing I got to eat was a piece of black bread. Black bread is made up of 40% sawdust. It's good for you. I mean, it'll loosen up your bowels, I'll tell you for sure. But anyway, it just like I say, when you don't get a lot to eat, you can't pass a lot. The average prisoner would go to the bowel movement about once every 5 or 6 days, that's all. Just didn't have anything to pass. And we did get water later on a little bit more, but on an average we would get 2 potatoes the size of a golf ball. We'd get 1 cup, half a cup like this, full of Swede soup. That's rutabagas. Rutabagas is what the Germans use. The good ones, the small ones, they eat them. The bigger ones, they feed them to the cows. The great big ones, they feed them to the hogs. And the rest of them, they take them down to the prison camp, and we wash them and scrub them and run them through an inch cutter, chop them up, and put them in a steam, a 400-gallon steam pot, and steam them overnight. And the next day we eat them. We get some liquid, no salt or pepper, seasoning in it, and a few strands of that Swede, you know, rutabaga. And that's what's our meal, and those 2 potatoes. We take the 2 potatoes and put them in the pockets. We take this and eat it or drink it now. We had a cup to drink it in, but we didn't get any spoons, knives, or forks. You just had to do the best you could. What if you didn't have one? Well, you'd have to wait to go get yours when I got through drinking mine. Or we'd go up there and I'd say put mine in there, and then you would say put mine in there, and the German would put yours in there too. Then we'd go over here and divide it. Now we get a loaf of bread for 13 men. And a loaf of bread, whether it's this long or whatever it is, but you divide a loaf of bread into 13 equal pieces, and let me tell you, you got a job. This is the way we did it. We all numbered off in groups of 13. I'm number 1, you're number 2, you're number 3, you're number 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 13. Now today, I get to cut the bread. So I cut it, and I get to cut it in 13 pieces. I can take as long and do it as I want to. First thing I do, I cut a slice out right in the middle. That's 13. That means it's 6 here and 6 here. Then I take this thing and cut it in half. But remember, the loaf is wide up here and comes down to a point here. You got a lot of mathematics, a lot of algebra to do on those damn things.
Yes.
That's when I wished I'd learned to have been an artillery officer. I could have really done it. But I was real good at it. Everybody wanted me to cut for them. Now when you got through cutting, then you said, I'm finished. You're number 2 man. You come up here and you take the slice that you want. Now which one are you going to take? You're going to take the biggest one, aren't you? So if I made a bum fumble, you got the biggest one. He's set. Get down to the 12th man, he takes what's left. The smallest piece for me, right? But I get a bonus. But I don't get it, you get it. You get all the crumbs on there. And you keep those crumbs in a little tobacco box or whatever it is, a little tin can, because that is what you can make gravy out of. You didn't know that, did you? Oh, the best gravy in the world. You can make chocolate pie out of it too. I mean, there's all kind of things you can make out of it. Imagination is what you got to have. and be hungry enough, it all tastes good. Now, I want to tell you one thing. Remember I told you about Eddie Hall? Well, after I was captured, they brought him in. 2 riflemen had been captured with him, and they were carrying him on a ladder. Eddie had been hit in the back, and the bullet came out here. And when they come out, they exploded out his stomach and blew his guts all over the place. And they come up there with him on that thing, and they were walking in his guts. They laid him down, and the German sanitation said, come on, you can fix him up. So I took a morphine surette and hit him in that arm, gave it to him, and hit him in that arm and gave it to him. And I said, Eddie, I looked at his dog tag, he's Catholic. I took his hands and folded across his chest. There was nothing I could do but lie to him, truthfully. I said, the Germans have got a hospital here, and when you come to, you're going to be just fine. You are lucky we got a hospital here. Eddie, close your eyes. Fire vor, du som är i himlen, hellig vare ditt namn, till oss kommer det höja. Skate din vilja som i himlen, så oss på jorden. And get some of his blood and put it across on his forehead. And I said, repeated the Lord's Prayer in Danish to him, and ended it with Amen, Amen, Amen. And then I went over there and got another cigarette out and gave him another shot right here, so it hit him quick. In 5 minutes he was dead. He was bleeding profusely. What else could I do for Eddie? That's the way I got my first case. And so it's just like you say, there's a lot of wonderful things happen, but Eddie was my buddy. And it didn't make me cry or anything. Later on I thought about it, oh, golly. What is his girlfriend back in somewhere near Syracuse, New York? And I knew, he told me before we came in combat, Lois was her name, Lois Green. She said she had gotten pregnant in December, and she was carrying his baby.